Episode 1 of Hostage begins with a couple discussing their plans. The woman, Abigail, wants to run for office, but is worried about the media scrutiny this will bring for their daughter. Her husband, Alex, encourages her to follow her dreams regardless. This is how Abigail comes to run for the office of Prime Minister and ends up winning. The next thing she knows, she and her family are being ushered into Downing Street. Fast forward 8 months, and Abigail is being dragged to the house after failing to fix the NHS and social care system. The opposition leader points out that Abigail has gutted the military to save the health system, and yet there is nothing to actually show for it. Currently, there is a national health crisis as vital drugs and medications have become scarce. Abigail does her best to defend herself, but it's clear she needs more time to figure out a solution. Meanwhile, a medical delegation led by Alex arrives at French Guiana. The team of doctors is there to offer free medical services, but unbeknownst to them, someone is taking pictures. As they go about their business, armed men pull up to the village. They shoot the team's translator and take the doctors hostage. Back in the UK, Abigail changes and gets ready for the Anglo Summit. The French president is on her way, and Abigail hopes to strike a deal with her. Her advisor, Kofi, suggests they use a ship carrying French refugees as a bargaining chip with France. Abigail is not hot on this idea, but times call for necessity. Kofi also suggests that Abigail apologise for a remark she made about Vivienne in the past. Vivienne is currently running for a second term, and Abigail's words hurt her campaign. However, Abigail refuses to apologise. A few minutes later, Vivienne does arrive at Downing Street as the media throw questions at her. The ladies quickly take photos together, exchange gifts, and get straight down to business. Vivienne refuses to give in to Abigail's demands, and she wants nothing to do with helping the refugees. Instead, she's requesting that French troops be stationed on the British border to help tighten security. Of course, Abigail refuses to allow foreign troops on British soil, but Kofi intervenes and asks to resume the talks after lunch. During the break, Aisha informs Abigail that her daughter Sylvie is back. Now, Sylvie lied about going to a friend's house and went partying instead. Her mum scolds her and reminds the girl to keep a low profile, and as they talk, Aisha interrupts to arrange the Prime Minister's next appointment. Simultaneously though, Kofi gets the call about Alex's kidnapping. He calmly breaks the news to Abigail, and she immediately starts asking why and how to rescue her husband. However, she wants to keep the situation on a need-to-know basis. She's worried people will take advantage of the news and will compromise her. Kofi advises her to inform her ministers, but Abigail orders him to forego protocol. She requests only that MI6 and a few staff members be briefed on this. Next, Abigail gets ready to break the news to Sylvie. Her daughter gets a video from the kidnappers though, but Abigail snatches the phone before Sylvie can see it and tries to calm her daughter down, while Aisha takes the phone to MI6 for analysis. Now, outside the French embassy, protesters welcome Vivienne. They want her to give the refugee issue more priority, and among the protesters happens to be her stepson, Matteo. Meanwhile, Adrienne, Vivienne's assistant, warns Kofi that he might be getting fired. She also notices that something feels off with the British staff. Once MI6 analyses the video, Abigail invites Vivienne to the Situation Room to watch it with her. The video happens to be of Alex reading the kidnappers' demands. The culprits want Abigail to resign within 24 hours. Now, Vivienne offers to help Abigail with this and promises to assist her in getting her husband back. They then move on to the next thing on their schedule, which happens to be a press conference. At the conference, Abigail apologises to Vivienne for her past comments. As for Vivienne, she announces that Britain will help the refugees on board the ship as a gesture of good faith. The announcement catches Abigail by surprise, while the reporters clamour for more information. After the press conference, Abigail confronts Vivienne about this. The latter makes it clear that she will help bring back Alex, but Abigail will have to allow French troops to be stationed on British borders. Back in French Guiana, the kidnapper receives word that a rescue mission is being organised. Later in the evening, Abigail promises Sylvie that she will get Alex back. They visit Abigail's dad at the hospital and lie to him about what's happening after a quick game of Scrabble. And back in French Guiana, Alex tries to reassure the other doctors that they will be fine. At the reception, Abigail and Vivienne bond over their shared sense of loneliness, a natural consequence of their jobs. As here, Vivienne also runs into her stepson, and he's brought his new girlfriend Saskia along. It's obvious Vivienne doesn't approve of Matteo's girlfriend or his activism, and she asks him to stop participating in the protests. Now, Matteo responds that Vivienne has lost her way and forgotten her reason for joining politics in the first place. He blames his father for pushing Vivienne onto the wrong path, but later on we see exactly why there's so much tension between them. For now though, Kofi updates Abigail that they have located the doctors. After speaking with Matteo, Vivienne heads to the Situation Room to monitor the rescue mission. Now, the French soldiers get into position while another soldier, Thomas, keeps tabs on the kidnappers on the ground. He notes that the kidnappers are getting ready to transport the hostages. Just then, Vivienne gets a video message. The sender threatens to reveal her secret affair with Mateo if she helps Abigail rescue the doctors. With their support only 2 minutes away, Vivian refuses to give her soldiers the order to approach. She aborts the mission and the helicopter turns back. Now Abigail orders Thomas to stay on the kidnappers while she asks Vivian what is going on. Unfortunately, Vivian tells her she will need to resign if she wants to save her husband and walks out the room. Episode 2 of Hostage starts with Thomas staying on the kidnappers. Back in the UK, Abigail tries to reach Vivian, but the latter ignores her calls. Now Vivian drops by Mateo's house and as her security sends Saskia away. She tells him about the blackmail and her concern that her team has been compromised. She's also worried about how this will affect her re-election campaign. Now Vivian insists she can't lose, and he warns her against letting her husband control her. Mateo offers to help her find out who sent the videos, but all of this is left very much in the air. Meanwhile, Abigail visits the Chief of Defense and tells him about Alex's abduction. The two try to come up with a rescue plan, but it proves to be tricky. They need Vivian's approval before sending a team, and once again, Abigail leaves a message for Vivian. Back in the French Guiana, the kidnappers shoot Thomas and take him hostage. In the UK, Abigail gets ready for a day while listening to the news stories about the national health crisis. She asks Kofi to find Vivian, who has been ignoring her calls. He, in turn, informs her that Thomas has been abducted and is most likely dead. He suggests that they wait for the kidnappers to call again, but the deadline is quickly approaching. Kofi advises her to tell the cabinet, but Abigail refuses and continues with the meeting as if nothing is wrong. She reports to the cabinet that her talks with Vivian are going well. After the meeting, Abigail finds Sylvie waiting in her office. The girl went through the report about her dad and has found out the kidnappers' demands. She confronts her mum for keeping her in the dark about this, and she vows never to forgive her mum if she fails to bring Alex back. Sylvie can't understand why her mum can't just resign from her job. And speaking of Alex, the kidnappers move the hostages to a new location. Alex and the other doctors treat Thomas's wound while trying to remain positive. On the other end, Saskia calls Mateo and claims Vivian's security is following her. Now Mateo comes clean about his affair with his stepmom, and he assures Saskia that he will handle the issue and that he still loves her. At Downing Street, Kofi talks to Abigail and insists she talk to her cabinet. She ignores his advice once again, and he gives his resignation notice. Outside, the media questions if Abigail is getting played by Vivian. Later on, Vivian and Abigail attend the electric vehicle exhibit. Whilst there, Abigail tries to reason with Vivian and gives in to her demands. However, Vivian says the deal is off. Now Abigail tries begging, but Vivian remains unmoved. Mateo also attends the event as well and insists on seeing Vivian. Unfortunately, he isn't able to find the person who sent the video, and he asks Vivian to stop looking into Saskia and to leave them alone. Mateo is frustrated by the politician Vivian is shaping up to be, while Sylvie is also frustrated with her own mum. She tells her granddad everything, and he tries calling Abigail, but she ignores his call. After the deadline, Vivian, Livingston and Abigail meet in the Situation Room. The kidnappers have actually sent a video link, and Abigail insists on negotiating with them. The negotiation doesn't end well, despite Abigail's sincere efforts. Alex gives her a clue that the kidnappers are British, and unfortunately they kill one of the doctors, and Sylvie walks in at that precise moment and is horrified to witness the killing. She storms off. Abigail follows, but Sylvie blames her again and runs to her room. Back to Alex for now. He tries to negotiate with the kidnappers, but fails to do so. The kidnapper mentions that he also once had a family too, and after that mess, Vivian comes clean about being blackmailed. She doesn't go into details, but Abigail offers to help her all the same. She mentions a clue that Alex gave her, but still, Vivian decides to save herself and her family. Before Abigail can figure out a new rescue plan, a journalist approaches her team. The journalist is ready to print the news of Alex's kidnapping the next morning, and he's disappointed that Abigail lied to her voters when she promised to be different. To get ahead of the story, Abigail orders Kofi to prepare a press conference of her own, while Kofi warns her against resigning. Instead of resigning, Abigail decides to double down and announces that she's not going to give in to the terrorists' demands. She also reveals that Vivian is being threatened as well. Meanwhile, Vivian's chief of staff gets a call from the kidnapper. They agree that they underestimated Abigail, and the kidnapper responds by telling Adrienne that he is coming back to the UK, which is where episode 2 comes to an end. Episode 3 of Hostage starts with the media covering Abigail's impromptu press conference. Meanwhile, Adrienne picks up Vivian's husband, who's flown in to show his wife's support. In Parliament, Abigail continues to face more opposition. The opposition accuse her of gambling with her husband's life and the country's safety. The minister there mentions the case of a young boy called Ataf. Now the boy died due to a lack of asthma medicine, and Abigail does her best to assure the ministers that she's working on a solution to solve the health crisis. Once again, she clarifies that she won't be intimidated into resigning. As for Vivienne, she finally tells her husband that she's had an affair with his son. He's shocked but quickly moves to discuss the best way to save her career. She decides to make a deal with Abigail. In the meantime, Abigail returns home and finds Sylvie locked in her bathroom. Sylvie is struggling emotionally and mentally with everything that's been going on, and Sylvie reveals that she's the one who leaked the news. She accuses her mum of caring more about her career than her family. Back in French Guiana, Alex and the other doctors begin to give up hope. Thomas starts convincing them to find a way out for themselves, while that night, Vivienne visits Abigail in the middle of the night. They make a deal to save Alex on the condition that Abigail looks into who this mole might be. At the same time, Kofi promises not to resign. The following morning, Abigail asks Aisha to conduct a discreet background check on the French and British staff members. Now, Vivienne intentionally misleads Adrienne into thinking that the American and French troops will launch a rescue mission in 3 hours' time. At the airport, the kidnapper arrives and receives a call from Adrienne, who updates him on the current situation. Now, Abigail meets with her cabinet and apologises for sidelining them with the abduction news. The issue of the dead boy comes up again, and Abigail promises to reach out to the mum. Later, Abigail heads home and finds her dad has discharged himself from the hospital. The two argue over how to handle Alex's abduction, and Abigail accuses her dad of micromanaging her career. He warns though that she might lose Sylvie if Alex dies. He advises her to quit, but it's too late. Elsewhere, Vivienne and her husband drop by Matteo's house. They find Saskia there, and Matteo refuses to send her away. Now, Matteo's dad suggests they put up a front as a strong, devout family, and he wants them to visit a church and take press pictures. Now, Matteo refuses and warns Vivienne against going with the plan. Meanwhile, in the French Guiana, Thomas devises a plan to escape once the kidnappers have relocated again. At the same time, Vivienne and Abigail launch a surprise rescue mission. Luckily, the French troops locate the kidnappers' vehicles, and their staff are caught off guard by the mission. Aisha reports that Kofi has made a suspicious payment through a shell company 6 months back, and Abigail finds it hard to believe. Now, in the situation room, Kofi notices Adrienne acting strangely. He follows her and overhears her call with the kidnappers. He has her arrested, but Abigail puts him on leave pending investigation. She still needs to investigate the suspicious payment further. After Adrienne's call, the kidnapper warns the others. They try to quickly move the hostages to a new location, but Alex and the others manage to fight back and start running. However, one of them is killed and Alex is forced to kill one of the kidnappers. Just then though, the French troops storm the compound and save the day. Abigail is beside herself with joy, and she rushes to get the phone to Sylvie so she can talk to her dad. Back on the streets, the other kidnapper interrupts Ataf's public wake and causes a commotion. Since they're dressed as police officers, people assume that they're acting under Abigail's orders. At the church, Vivienne and her husband get into a heated fight. She refuses to go along with his plan to reveal the affair, and he wants to act as her saviour by sticking by her side after the scandal hits. He thinks as long as he forgives her, the nation will too. Now, Vivienne threatens to reveal his secrets if he does this, and on their way out, Vivienne gives a press conference revealing that the French troops have rescued Alex. Elsewhere, Matteo gets a rude awakening when he returns home to find Saskia gone. She packed in a hurry and left a damning episode behind. In the situation room, the kidnapper calls Adrienne's phone and demands to speak to Abigail. Abigail points out that he's lost, but the guy seems unshaken. According to him, the game is far from over. He says there are many like Adrienne who are willing to fight for the cause. The scene then cuts to Saskia heading to Abigail's dad's hospital and killing him outright. Episode 4 of Hostage starts with the media reporting on the intense backlash Abigail has been facing and the ensuing social unrest. Now, many blame Abigail for focusing on saving her husband, foregoing the country in the process. In the evening, the Home Secretary is attacked on his way home. Meanwhile, Abigail visits the morgue to pay her last respects to her dad. In the back of her mind, she wonders if he was killed. Now, Sylvie helps her clear the hospital room, but the tension between them is absolutely palpable. News of the latest attack, though, forces Abigail to refocus her attention on politics. The ministers meet the next morning and renounce the violence. The ministers inform Abigail that they want her to resign, as they don't believe she's putting the country first. The cabinet wants Dan to take over, but Abigail refuses to willingly resign. The cabinet couldn't care less that the situation is personal for Abigail. After the meeting, another storm arises after Vivienne's affair with her stepson is revealed. Now, Matteo wakes up to the news and the sound of someone ringing his doorbell. He quickly grabs Saskia's laptop and sneaks out through the window, and he fails to notice that the kidnappers have been following him. Elsewhere, Vivienne visits her husband and is appalled to learn that he's playing games to embarrass her. He calls his lawyer and PR specialist to manage the scandal, but Vivienne wants to focus on getting Adrienne to talk and reveal the mastermind behind this whole scheme. Vivienne finally reaches her breaking point and requests a divorce from her husband. She leaves to meet with Adrienne at the French embassy to interrogate her. In the meantime, Abigail visits Kofi and briefs him on the MI5 interim report they have on him. Kofi utilised his connections at the Treasury to secure a tax loophole. He used that money for his wife's treatment, and while he's not proud of it, he says he would do it again. And Abigail understands his situation and asks for his help. She asks him to look into Dan and see if he is the one behind the attacks. Now Kofi agrees to help her, but the mastermind is still unclear right now. After the meeting, Abigail goes to pick up Alex from the hospital. The family is happy to be reunited, but many things are still going on. Now Abigail shares her concern over her dad's death, and Alex remains as supportive as always. He agrees to get debriefed immediately to help find the kidnappers. Livingston takes over the debriefing and plays Alex a voice recording of the kidnapper. Hearing the voice causes Alex to break down, and he reveals that the kidnapper mentioned once that he had a daughter. Other than that, there are no new leads on who this kidnapper is. On the other side of town, Saskia keeps an eye on Vivienne. She calls the anonymous man once Vivienne arrives at the embassy to interrogate Adrienne. The man orders her to take out Adrienne before she mentions them. During the interrogation though, Adrienne refuses to talk and calls Vivienne a traitor. As the French police get ready to transport her, Saskia takes a sniper shot and misses. The bodyguards throw Adrienne into Vivienne's car and drive off, and during the ride, Vivienne convinces Adrienne to give her at least one name. Now Vivienne and her team drive directly to Downing Street, and whilst there, Vivienne tells Abigail that Adrienne mentioned someone called Shagan. Vivienne suggests they work together and bring down the attackers. Well, simultaneously, Matteo calls Vivienne and asks to meet. He wants to show her Saskia's laptop, but the kidnapper secretly watches Matteo get inside. He pretends to be a journalist and gets inside as well, and within a few minutes, Vivienne and Abigail sign a deal and quickly announce it to the media. It surprises everyone that Vivienne is helping Britain selflessly, and in her speech, Vivienne declares she will no longer allow anyone to lead her astray. She wants to be an honest politician. For this reason, she is going back to her old path of protecting the weak. She shows her support for Abigail, but it's too late. A vote of confidence is currently taking place in the cabinet, and as for Abigail, she calls for peace and time to work on delivering the drugs. Matteo is proud to hear Vivienne's new stand, while in the meantime, Kofi calls Abigail and tells her that Dan is actually clean. She asks him to look into someone named Shagan. Matteo shows Vivienne and Abigail the evidence on Saskia's laptop, and he also tells them everything he knows about Saskia. Thanks to the evidence on this laptop, Abigail realizes that her father was killed. They quickly find more information on Saskia and discover she is a discharged corporal. As they talk, Vivienne questions why Saskia left behind such an important laptop. Outside, the kidnapper watches the feed from the laptop and blows the place up. Vivienne jumps in front of Matteo to protect him, and hearing the blast, Alex rushes to find Abigail. He finds her barely conscious. Thankfully, she regains consciousness as soldiers arrive to secure the site, and Alex checks on Vivienne and pronounces her dead. Matteo is shell-shocked as the soldiers grab him and Abigail's family, leaving everything on a massive cliffhanger. Episode 5 of Hostage starts with a flashback to Sylvie's birthday party a few years back. At the time, Abigail was a minister, and she got a call to pull British soldiers from Belize. After the Guatemalan army invaded Belize, they had to evacuate their troops immediately. Unfortunately, given the time constraint, they couldn't bring the Belizean locals who helped them. Abigail had to make the difficult decision here to take only the people who were already on board. Back in the present, Abigail, Matteo and her family safely make it to the bunk. Abigail is still in shock while Matteo is quietly processing after the bomb. Meanwhile, Saskia and Shagan get ready to leave, believing their mission is complete. Well, that is until General Livingston calls to them that Abigail is alive, but Vivienne is dead. He's not happy that Shagan bombed Downing Street without his authority. He heavily scolds Shagan and orders him to leave the country, promising to clean up this mess. Instead of leaving, Shagan orders Saskia to track down Abigail and her family. However, Saskia starts to see that Shagan is deviating from their mission. Now, Abigail comforts Matteo and calls her staff to check their well-being. On the news, Dan announces the death of Vivienne and condemns the attack. He adds that he is now the interim Prime Minister and is sending the military to manage the civil unrest. Livingston evacuates the press on Downing Street and starts a media blackout. Now Abigail calls Aisha and asks her to get to Kofi. She needs their help to figure out who is behind the coup, and she sends Alex and Sylvie to stay off the radar at the house Matteo suggested. It doesn't take long for Kofi to reunite with Abigail at the bunk with the rest of her trusted staff. They quickly put the pieces together and discover that Livingston is behind everything. Now Abigail calls Kathy here, who is currently with the other ministers at the military base under the leadership of Livingston. Already, Kathy is worried about Livingston's approach to the civil unrest. She agrees to help Abigail and her team gain access to the base, and once at the base, Abigail publicly confronts Livingston. The man slips and implicates himself, and Dan orders his immediate arrest. Later, Dan briefs Abigail and informs her that the vote of confidence has been voided. As such, she retains her office. Unfortunately, Abigail doesn't have time to celebrate as Saskia and Shagan find her family and Mateo. Shagan calls Abigail and orders her to come alone if she wants to save her family. Shagan hates Abigail because he blames her for what happened to his family in Belize. He was married to a local Belizean woman who was 6 months pregnant when the war started. She was killed when Abigail gave the order to save only those on board the planes. While Saskia holds Mateo and Sylvie hostage, Alex talks to Shagan, trying to understand him. Now Alex is struggling with killing one of Shagan's men, and they discuss how hard it is to live with the guilt. Meanwhile, Mateo convinces Saskia to stop following Shagan's orders. He gives her a chance to leave just as the police arrive, and once Saskia is gone, Sylvie picks up a gun and tries to save her parents. She walks in on her mum talking with Shagan, begging him to let her family go. Shagan intentionally riles Sylvie up after seeing that she has a gun pointed at him. He confesses to putting the kill order on Abigail's dad, and this sends Sylvie over the edge. She opens fire, killing him instantly. The police arrive shortly after and secure the site, and they also arrest Sylvie since she shot Shagan. We then jump forward 3 months after the whole ordeal. Abigail talks to her family about their future, and they all agree that they are ready to support her next endeavour. She holds a press conference and uses Vivienne's famous words about people being entitled to the truth from their leaders. Abigail then calls for a general election and promises to be honest with the people. She also promises to work with the people that fix the country, and the show ends with the press clamouring to ask questions, bringing this miniseries to a close. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.